She was known as the Grand Old Lady. And with good reason. That's because HMS Warspite was nothing like the ordinary battleship. She fought through 2 world wars, clashed with enemy fleets, evaded bombs and torpedoes, and kept going when others would have been written off. But before the legend, and before the battle scars, she began life, just like every ship does. On the slipway. HMS Warspite was laid down in 1912 during an era when battleships weren't just tools of war, they were symbols of power. She was part of the Queen Elizabeth class, a new generation of fast battleships. Her design was revolutionary, focused entirely on speed and firepower. She carried 8 15-inch or 381mm guns, capable of hurling shells over 20 miles. And thanks to oil-fired boilers, she was faster than any dreadnought before her, hitting speeds of up to 24 knots. That might not sound fast now, but back then, it made her a serious threat to anything afloat. She was launched in November 1913, and commissioned just months after the First World War had begun. It wouldn't be long before she was thrown into the thick of it. Warspite joined the Grand Fleet in 1915, operating out of Scapa Flow in Scotland. Early on, she took part in patrols and exercises, waiting for the moment when the German High Seas Fleet would make its move. From the outset, Warspite's mission was clear: patrol the North Sea, maintain the blockade, and be ready to face the German High Seas Fleet whenever it dared to challenge British naval supremacy. That moment came in 1916, at the Battle of Jutland. This was the biggest naval clash of World War I. Over 250 ships from both sides clashed in the North Sea. Warspite was right in the middle of it, part of the 5th Battle Squadron, known for its heavy guns and fast battleships. That day, history took notice of HMS Warspite and never forgot. When the fleets collided off the Danish coast, Warspite and her sisters steamed boldly forward, their massive guns opening fire at extreme ranges. Despite the smoke and chaos, Warspite held her formation, firing salvo after salvo. But then, a disaster struck. A mechanical failure jammed her steering, forcing Warspite into a slow, uncontrolled turn, right into the heart of the enemy's line. For several tense minutes, she was a sitting duck. German shells rained down. Warspite was hit 15 times, some shots pierced her armor and caused serious damage. Yet thanks to her thick protection and quick damage control, the crew kept her afloat. Her gunners kept firing, and her crew fought to regain control. Eventually, Warspite limped away from the battle, battered but unbowed. Jutland was a brutal test, but Warspite had passed it. She returned to port for repairs, and for the rest of the war, patrolled the North Sea. Though no major fleet action followed, her presence remained a deterrent. By the end of World War I, Warspite had cemented her reputation as one of the Royal Navy's most respected ships. But her greatest chapters were still to come. After World War I, the world changed, and so would Warspite. However, in the early 1920s, she was placed in reserve. For a time, it seemed her fighting days were done. But by the 1930s, the world was growing dangerous again. The Admiralty made a bold decision: HMS Warspite would be rebuilt. From 1934 to 1937, she underwent a full modernization. Her engines and boilers were replaced, her superstructure was redesigned, radar and aircraft catapults were added, and her fire control was brought into the modern age. The Grand Old Lady had been reborn. When World War II erupted in 1939, Warspite was there, and she was ready. In April 1940, during the German invasion of Norway, Warspite steamed into the narrow icy fjords near Narvik, a place few expected to see a battleship. The towering cliffs and freezing waters offered cover for ambush, but also for prey. As she advanced, her Swordfish spotter plane launched into the low cloud cover and swirling mist. Initially tasked with scouting for surface targets, the crew soon spotted something far more ominous. A German submarine, U-64, lying in wait near the village of Björkvik. With the element of surprise on its side, the Swordfish banked and dove. The biplane, slow but deadly, released its bombs with pinpoint accuracy. Moments later, the water erupted in foam and fire. U-64 slipped beneath the surface, destroyed. It was the first time in history that a submarine had been sunk by an aircraft in wartime. The feat sent a ripple through both navies. The fjords were no longer safe havens, not from the air, and certainly not with Warspite on the hunt. But the day wasn't over. With the U-boat threat eliminated, the Swordfish resumed its patrol, this time scanning the winding inlets for enemy destroyers, and soon, it found them. German destroyers, hidden in the folds of the coastline, preparing to launch another attack. Now, they were exposed, the coordinates were relayed back to Warspite. Warspite turned toward the threat, her 15-inch guns roared to life. Shells thundered through the narrow fjord, echoing off the mountains like rolling drums of doom. One by one, the German ships were hit, torn apart by relentless firepower. By the end of the engagement, 8 enemy destroyers had been sunk. It was one of the Royal Navy's most effective single-day actions of the early war. Warspite had returned, and she had returned with fury. But her fight was only beginning. She was sent to the Mediterranean. In July 1940, she clashed with the Italian fleet at Calabria. At long range, Warspite scored a direct hit on the Italian battleship, Giulio Cesare, one of the longest-range, naval gunnery hits in history. Then came Cape Matapan, in 1941. Thanks to radar and British code breaking, Warspite and her sisters ambushed the Italian fleet at night. In minutes, 3 cruisers and 2 destroyers were sunk. But war takes its toll. During the evacuation of Crete, Warspite was hit by a German bomb that crippled her steering. She was towed to Alexandria, then across the Atlantic to the US for full repairs. It would take over a year. By 1943, she was back. Slower now and worn, but still dangerous. During the invasion of Sicily, Warspite provided fire support, pounding enemy coastal positions. But days later, she was struck again, this time by a German glide bomb. It tore through her side and flooded her boiler rooms. 14 men died. Yet still, she would not sink. She was patched up and returned to Britain for more repairs. And when D-Day arrived, in June 1944, Warspite was there, off Sword Beach, hammering German defenses. For 3 days, she provided relentless fire support. Soldiers on the beach praised her accuracy. Her last combat shots were fired in August 1944, near Le Havre. After nearly 30 years of service, Warspite's war was now over. She had survived 2 world wars, countless battles, bombings, and torpedoes. Her engines were tired, her hull worn. She was placed in reserve. But even in her final chapter, Warspite had one last story to tell. When HMS Warspite was finally retired in 1945, she wasn't just a battleship stepping down. She was a living memory of the Royal Navy's greatest century. From Jutland to Normandy, she had served through both world wars, earning more battle honors than any other ship in British history. But even legends, eventually, are laid to rest. The problem was, she didn't go quietly. In 1947, the Admiralty sold HMS Warspite to a scrapyard in South Wales. She was stripped down for her final journey, her masts gone, guns silent, propulsion crippled. Just a bare hull, being towed by tugboats down the Cornish coast. But even in death, Warspite would not be commanded. Caught in a fierce storm off Land's End, the tugs lost control. The great ship broke her tow lines and drifted helplessly, battered by waves and wind, until finally, she ran aground in Mounts Bay, near the village of Prussia Cove. There, the mighty Warspite came to rest, not in dry dock, but on the rocks. It was as if the ship herself had made the decision, this is where it ends. She sat there for years, rusting in the salt air, her bones exposed to sea and sky. Locals came to see her. Children played near the wreck. Veterans stood in silence, staring at what was left. Scrappers came, slowly cutting her apart, with torches and cranes. But it was slow, difficult work. The coastline was unforgiving, Warspite's hull was tough, too tough for easy breaking. By the early 1950s, most of her had been hauled away. But even today, parts of her hull, bits of steel and rivets, are still buried in the sand, visible at low tide. The sea has not forgotten her. And neither have those who knew her name. Warspite was never the biggest battleship. Never the fastest. But what she had, and what no other ship ever quite matched, was endurance. She fought longer. She fought harder, and she refused to quit. Across 2 world wars, and every major theater, from the North Sea to the Mediterranean, she stood where others fell. When radar was new, when aircraft ruled the skies, when guided bombs changed everything, Warspite still showed up. To her sailors, she was stubborn, moody, sometimes even uncooperative. But always there when it counted. One admiral called her, the ship that never let you down. Another called her, an ironclad with a soul. And to the Royal Navy, she was proof that even as the world changed, some things, duty, courage, resilience, held fast. Today, Warspite is remembered not just in museums or history books, but in the very DNA of the Royal Navy. Her name lives on in plaques, models, and memorials. And one day, perhaps another HMS Warspite will sail again, a submarine, a destroyer, or something not yet imagined, but bearing the same spirit. A ship that refuses to yield, because Warspite wasn't just a battleship, she was a fighter, a survivor, and above all, a symbol of a navy at its height, of a nation under fire, and of the men who served, fought, and died at sea. Her steel is gone, but her story remains. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. You can also subscribe and explore our channel for previous battleship videos. Bye for now and Godspeed.